What's going on, everyone? The Sweet Lou here. If you've been around here for a little bit, you know that I have the Nintendo Switch and that I've been playing through the new Zelda. So if you haven't seen those videos, you can watch Drunken Mess Lou unboxing the Switch with the Master Sword, as well as some Zelda stuff. Links will be at the end of the video and in the description below. Anyway, I'm issuing a spoiler warning right now. If you haven't finished Breath of the Wild or don't want to talk about it, get out of here. You can go watch some of my other garbage videos and give me validation for my otherwise worthless existence. So here's my story. I've put a lot of time into Breath of the Wild, specifically 125 or more hours. I really took my time with it, but as more of my friends started beating the game, the risk of spoilers grew exponentially. So I finished the Divine Beasts, all the shrines, got some cool gear, and I was on my way. I defeated Ganon and found the fight enjoyable, albeit not the most challenging boss fight ever. In fact, I found Thunderblight Ganon more challenging than the final boss Ganon. And then I got to watch all the ending cutscenes. Interestingly enough, a few people I know said they were pretty dissatisfied with the ending of the game. I quite enjoyed the way the game wrapped up, actually. I really think your opinion of the ending is directly shaped by how you approach the story, and how deep you went into the game. Because if I had to describe Breath of the Wild in one word, it would be subtle. Now, full disclosure, I'm a film nerd. I tend to really analyze the media I consume. I hope you'll join me on this analytical adventure through the game. If you hated the ending, maybe I can help you at least think about it a little differently. And of course, in an open world, non-linear game like this, there isn't a right or wrong way to experience it. No judgment here if you skip the story. Assuming you have acquired all the memories and Divine Beasts before the Ganon fight, you should have a pretty solid grasp of the story. Doing so is the only way to unlock the true ending in Breath of the Wild. Let's do a not-so-quick recap here, as I believe the events building up to the ending are extremely important in understanding the ending. In the lore of Breath of the Wild, we learn that 10,000 years ago, Calamity Ganon rained destruction on the planet. He was stopped by a previous incarnation of Zelda and Link, sealed and removed from their plane of existence. 100 years before our story begins, our current Zelda and Link incarnations are feverishly working on a battle plan, for Calamity Ganon's return has been prophesized by a fortune teller. Beside our hero and princess are 4 champions, Darut, Urbosa, Mipha, and Revali. Each of these 4 champions are destined to pilot the Divine Beasts, ancient construction marvels meant to defend the land and fight off Ganon. Link manages to acquire the Master Sword. All parties involved in the plan seem to be ready, except for one key detail. Zelda hasn't been able to tap into her sealing powers. Link drew the Master Sword and wields it with ease and finesse. The champions pilot their Divine Beasts. Zelda is the only one who hasn't fulfilled her role, and it's that very fact that creates all of the tension between Zelda and Link. In the earlier memory sequences, we see Zelda lashing out at Link.
And stop following me!
Not because she's a bitch in this timeline, but because she's reached a point of frustration in herself, and Link's success just reminds her that if Ganon were to return tomorrow, the plan wouldn't work, because of her. As time moves on, she warms up to him, especially evident in the sequence with the Yiga clan. But ultimately, Zelda goes to the springs of power, courage, and wisdom, and fails. She doesn't unlock her true potential. We learn of Mipha's love for Link. We learn that Darut is akin to Darunia from Ocarina, supportive of Link, treats him like a brother. We learn a little bit more about Revali, the Gary Oak of this universe.
Maybe we should just settle this one-on-one.
Revali kinda sounds like rival. Interesting, Nintendo. It's at Zelda's point of desperation where Mipha begins to explain when she's healing. She tends to think of getting cut off by earthquakes. Just kidding. The return of Calamity Ganon begins during this pivotal moment where maybe she could have helped Zelda unlock her potential. But drama. We can only assume that she was going to say she thinks about her love for Link. It's heavily implied in the earlier memory sequence, and I think it's a fair assessment. As the story progresses, we follow Link and Zelda through the woods, running for their lives. Ganon is too powerful. He managed to trap the champions inside the Divine Beasts. Zelda hasn't unlocked her power still. The plan falls apart, and in Zelda's world, it's all her fault. The ending of the world rests on her shoulders. We finally come to Link about to get gunned down by a guardian, and it's only then that Zelda is able to tap into her powers and seals everything nearby. But in the mix, Link falls too. He collapses in her arms, and we're led to think he's a goner here. This is actually an interesting point to bring up. By the looks of the scene, I was under the impression that Zelda's power was so savage and uncontrolled in this moment that the seal not only destroyed the Guardians, but it also dealt the fatal blow on Link. I could be wrong, but I think that makes for a damn fine story moment. Either way, Link is seemingly dead, but the Master Sword speaks to Zelda. And I'd like to point out that the Master Sword uses Fi's sound effect from Skyward Sword. What a fantastic throwback. The plan hatches. Link is brought to the Shrine of Resurrection, and Zelda returns the Master Sword to the Lost Woods. She tries to give a message to Link, but the Great Deku Tree tells her to hang on to it and give it to him personally. Fast forward 100 years, our hero emerges alive again, but this time the world is pretty fucked. He meets the spirit of the King of Hyrule. He finds Impa in the Kakariko village. He frees the divine beasts and is imbued with the power of the spirits of the champions. Finally, Link faces down Ganon. Zelda intervenes, and our heroes manage to defeat him. And now we can talk about this ending, am I right? Fuck yeah. So there's tiers of endings. If you don't do the Divine Beast, you get a pretty damn short ending.
Do you really remember me?
But with the true ending, we get to see a little bit more. We see a glimpse of the spirits of our allies, watching with pride as Link and Zelda emerge from the castle. Then, we see what I assume to be a bit of a flash forward. Things seem to be normalizing. The kingdom is likely in the starting phases of rebuilding. Zelda tells Link that they need to head to Zora's domain to talk to the king about Mipha, to try and ease the pain of his loss. Then Zelda explains that she can no longer hear the voice residing within the Master Sword. She admits that she's okay with it too. We zoom out to an extreme wide shot and watch as Link rushes up beside the princess, and the two return to their horses. In the foreground, we see the silent princess flower blooming among a whole field of the flower, a callback to an earlier moment in the game. More on that later. It's important to remember throughout this game that Link and Zelda are both entangled in fate. Link, chosen by the Master Sword, and Zelda, born with the blood of the goddess coursing through her veins. Now this is an interesting plot device here. In most previous Zelda entries, you as the player have had a straightforward destiny. Go find the Master Sword, slay this bad guy, get the shiny triangle, and go home, right? In this game, you can go fight Ganon with 3 hearts. You can also experience everything this game has to offer, and face him so well prepared, it kinda becomes too easy. The major difference here is that in Breath of the Wild, it's Zelda who is destined to seal Ganon completely. It's Zelda who saves Link at first. Admittedly, Link saves her as well later on. In reality, you can skip the story of the game, skip the Master Sword, and still fight Ganon and win. So does it really matter that Link is the chosen wielder of the Master Sword? It's details like these that lead me to believe this game is more about Zelda than it is Link. Stay with me here for a second before you thumbs down this video and call me a retarded virgin. I mean, come on. It's called The Legend of Zelda? Huh? Dad jokes aside, let's dive into some of the character traits we see in this incarnation of Zelda. Obviously, we see strength and dedication. She spends most of the early memory sequences trying to tap into her power, while Link, and really everyone else around her, become symbols of her shortcomings. I think it's fairly safe to say there's a bit of an inferiority complex going on here. For those of you who are confused by what I'm saying here, the definition of an inferiority complex is an unrealistic feeling of general inadequacy caused by actual or supposed inferiority in one's sphere, sometimes marked by aggressive behavior in compensation. Zelda is surrounded by success and people who excel in their arenas. Mipha can heal seemingly any wound. Revali can create a gale and fly into the sky. Urbosa can snap her fingers and control lightning, probably with the help of that dank Gerudo mask, but whatever. Daruk can punch through volcanic eruptions and make a shield thing. Zelda can update her MySpace blog about how she's a failure. I recognize that some of you might be a little too young to know what MySpace is, so for those of you who don't, go to bed. No, I'm just kidding. MySpace was a social media website long before Facebook and all those other dumb shits. Zelda explains about her failures in several points of the game.
Doing everything I can. Don't you see? There's nothing more I can do. Please, just tell me. What is it? What's wrong with me? I'm just a failure. I tried and I failed them all.
She's undoubtedly out of place throughout all the memory sequences. As a result, she works more with the Sheikah technology, much to the dismay of the king. The king scolds her and tells her the importance of unlocking her powers, which, in my opinion, seems to make the situation even worse for her, evidenced by both Zelda and the king's diaries. We can see the strain of their relationship in the very way the art designers chose to block this scene. Take a look at Zelda's positioning here. We see her completely imprisoned in the frame by the king's legs. They didn't just set this up because it looked cool, people. This is a very deliberate shot that is meant to imply the issues within her relationship with the king, as well as effectively portray Zelda as powerless before him. Along with unresolved daddy issues, Zelda also probably has some mommy issues, because her mom's dead as fuck. She died when Zelda was only 6 years old, and could not aid in the completion of Zelda's training. So, pair family drama, along with being surrounded by people who are doing better than you, and I think you'd have some self-esteem issues too. So what's the resolution to Zelda's psychological issues and shortcomings? She fights Ganon alone for 100 years while Link naps, and ultimately defeats Ganon with the help of the now well-rested Link. I think the last shots of the true ending explain the resolution to our story in a very subtle manner. This framing is a very interesting decision. Note the blocking of the shot. Link lands beside Zelda, whereas before Zelda's acceptance, Link usually trailed off behind her. While this could mean a number of things, I believe it states one thing fairly clearly. Link is no longer the reminder of Zelda's failures. If anything, Link is now the symbol of the future of the kingdom, and Zelda's burdens have been lifted from her shoulders. So when Zelda explains to Link that she can no longer hear the voice within the Master Sword, this is the first time we really get to hear Zelda admit that she's okay with her power dwindling. It's this very line that screams to me her inferiority complex is now resolved, or at least on the road to resolution. While we're on the topic of the art design of the true ending, let's discuss the Silent Princess flower. We're told by Zelda earlier on that the flower is endangered, and only blooms in the wild. In the true ending of the game, we see a whole field of the Silent Princess flowers blooming, implying the idea that when allowed to flourish in the wild, the flowers will prevail regardless of the seemingly grave circumstances. This idea extends much further than just the flower. In many ways, Zelda is restrained by the king, and only when she's out in the field making her own decisions does she realize her power. I'd also like to point out the not-so-subtle addition to the classic Legend of Zelda font in the logo. This logo has been more or less unchanged, excluding subtitles, for almost every entry in the series. In Breath of the Wild, we see a single Silent Princess flower blooming from the letter Z. We could also explore the idea of Link and Zelda's romance in the true ending sequence. While we've already discussed the importance of the blocking of the scene and the body language of Link and Zelda beside one another in the end, there are two major things we can find within the game to support the idea that Zelda and Link are on the path to romantic involvement. The first item comes from Zelda's diary. This is located within Hyrule Castle, opposite where one of the memory sequences is triggered. Some simple phrases in this writing obviously are indicative of Zelda's infatuation with Link, and still not a word passes his lips. I never know what he's thinking. It makes my imagination run wild, guessing at what he's thinking, but will not say. What does the boy chosen by the sword that seals the darkness think of me? Will I ever truly know? Damn son, she wants the D. After reading Zelda's diary and getting a bit more insight on her character motivation, we move on to everyone's favorite Rito, Cass. If you complete all of his shrine quests, he will return to the Rito village, where he tells you a bit about his teacher and gives you some valuable insight into the story. It's kind of crazy to me that you could very easily miss this, and essentially miss out on a pretty key part of the main story. Cass explains how his teacher was in love with Zelda. However, Zelda only had eyes for her appointed knight. He goes on to explain how his teacher witnessed Link give his life for Zelda, which was a turning point. From then on, the teacher devoted himself to learning the ancient songs to pass down, so that when the hero returns, he could help in the destruction of Ganon. Despite the fact that Breath of the Wild has so much subtlety and subtext to the game, I think this is a pretty straightforward explanation. Zelda was feeling Link. I guess it's okay, because Mipha's, dead.
I hope you know that I will always protect you.
Well, thanks so much for listening, guys. I'd love to hear your opinions in the comment section below. I was going to do a section about the timeline placement, but that turned into such a huge discussion that I feel like it should be its own video, so be on the lookout for that. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I am the Sweet Lou.